How do we integrate and create wholeness? How do we unify these energies within us so we can be more complete and so we can show up with more presence, with more strength, with more honor, very masculine, but also with significantly more compassion, intuition, grace, forgiveness. Like these qualities, maybe we don't look at as often as men. And if we did, we would be stronger, more noble men.
Welcome to Breathword. If you've been listening along, you know the last few episodes have held a feminine energy, strong but soft, intuitive, nurturing. But today we're calling in something different. This episode is a doorway into the healthy masculine through presence, power, and purpose. I'm joined by Matt, a friend whose life over the past year has been a living initiation. Together, we explore what it means to walk with uncertainty into devotion, to reclaim wholeness, and to integrate both the warrior and the heart. Welcome, Matt. Thank you for joining. I'm very excited to sit down and talk, especially after our coffee chat. I had reached out to you because I've had a few females on the podcast, great feminine energy, but was hoping to have a little masculine energy. And it sounds like it also just came at the perfect time for you. So looking forward to exploring more about your journey and takeaways for others around power and presence and purpose. So before we get in, let's take a moment to just drop into our bodies. Close your eyes if that feels safe, wherever you are. If you're listening, just feeling the weight of your body, solid, supported. Feel the space in your chest open, receiving, letting it go, letting it expand. And then we'll just gently inhale through our nose for 4, inviting in presence, holding at the top for 2, and exhaling through the mouth for 6. Exhaling any performance or pressure we put on ourselves. Holding at the bottom for 2. Inhaling for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Holding at the top. 2, 1. Exhaling slowly. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold at the bottom. 1, 2. And inhaling one last time through the nose, sipping in that presence, holding at the top for 2, and exhaling for 6, fully, deeply letting it go. And release. And now I'm going to read a poem that will set the stage a little bit. I wrote this based on our conversation that we had about your journey. And yeah, it's called The Quiet Becoming. A young boy with wide-eyed hunger, curious, unruly, wild by design. He roars too loud, he acts too much. He never quite does what is right. He feels it all, the wins, the wounds, but learns to lock it all up tight. Better to seem unmoved than show the storm that stirs inside. So he studies, performs, achieves, hides the softness buried deep, sometimes rebelling against his will, a young wolf howling to be seen. Still, a man wears the armor passed down, dreams stitched from inherited fears, a coat once worn by men before, but is it truly meant for him to wear? Is it strength or just defense, this armor he's been told to trust? Does it guard him from the world outside, or simply wall him off from love? Even stone gives way to water, even trees bend with the wind. Even fire needs a delicate spark, flickering soft before it begins. Where do we go from here? Asked the wild little boy inside. Can we follow the ways of our curiosities, even ones we've left behind? Can we wander without shame, Can we play without a prize? Can we let our joy be holy, a compass, not disguise? Then speaks the rebel teenage heart, the one who raged to be seen. What if strength is not in silence, but in saying what we mean? Can we strip the armor slowly, not to break us, but to be shown? Can we carry both the fire and the fear and not do it all alone? Then the man takes one long breath, deep enough to hold them all. The boy, the rebel, the silence, the roar, the rise and every fall. I am not just what I've endured. I am not any mask I wore. I am the questions still unanswered and the courage to ask more. I am the calm within the chaos, the softness in the flame, the thunder learning it's okay to be accompanied by rain. I am not just strength, but space to feel, not just power, but the will to stay, a noble becoming, a path reclaimed, the start of a different way.
Wow. I feel deeply seen. You just took me on a wild adventure, and that is, I need a copy of that. I'm going to be printing that out and hanging that up. That's beautiful and a perfect representation, such a poetic representation of our conversation. And I'm so honored to be in this presence, to bring to the table a masculine part of the conversation, not for polarity's sake, but really for wholeness and integration, especially at a time when I feel that the masculine is being called to evolve right now. And so this is a really exciting conversation. Thank you, because every piece of that resonated deeply with my heart. And the armor piece, I feel like you just dismantled my armor, even sitting here in the studio with you. So thank you. I'm very excited to be opening up and to be talking about all these beautiful topics we have. I finished that poem late last night. I put the finishing touches on the last stanzas, and then I reread it this morning, and I kept not being able to read it without crying because I was like, I cannot cry again on this thing, especially because it's about masculinity. But I think that a part of it just touched me so deeply I wrote it trying to think about your experience as a male, and then other conversations I've had since with some of my male friends who sounded like they had a similar experience, whether the pressures put on them was from family or coaches or friends or just like societal pressures. And also talking about how the pressures that have been put on women a lot of times are a little bit more like outward and forward and on magazine covers like that. And then the men's pressures are a little bit more silent and understated and just something that is experienced without being talked about a lot. But I think that the reason why the last part was resonating just with me and I guess like my masculine energy was just because of work. And I think that a lot of times women do have to, or don't have to, but live and work in very masculine dominated roles. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I feel this. And this is like where I'm at when it comes to my work life. So anyway, thank you too for just helping me to explore this. And like I said, it sounds like it came at the perfect time for you having this conversation because you've been in a year of real reflection. And just to also set the stage is the way that I know you is through my brother. Your friends, you live down the street from each other. The reason why I live in LA.
Yeah. And literally, he said, every time I see Matt, it's like instant happiness. And we just refer to you as one of the most optimistic, happy, bubbly people.
If you only knew.
Yeah, exactly. But it's great to dig deeper. And it just shows that everyone has a story and things that they're going through.
Yeah, so much. And it's funny you even touch on it not being masculine to cry and things like that. And we can definitely touch on that. But I think so much of what is being called forward right now for the masculine in anyone, because these are just energies. And so we don't need to think about gender, male or woman. We don't have to think in those terms, just energetically even. I really feel that the masculine is being asked to go deeper into its emotions. And typically, a lot of what I'm resonating with this poem, because it's so well articulated around my life experience is I've had a lot of repression of my emotions. I've had a lot of repression of going deep into understanding why I feel a certain way, or my energy is too much as a kid, et cetera, et cetera. And so I would close it off. And so my inner world became really repressed and shoved down, and I became afraid of it, being vulnerable and opening up. And this idea that crying is not masculine, I think is, any man who says that, I think is actually probably one of the weakest men. A man who can't cry is probably one of the weakest because they're not willing to go into their heart, and their heart is truth. So the reason why that cuts so deeply for you and why I'm on the verge of tears hearing it, because it's so personal to me, is because that poem speaks of truth, and truth lives in the heart. It doesn't live in the mind. But as men, we get so trapped in our minds, and we ruminate and we think so logically about things. And that's a powerful tool. This is a supercomputer in our brain. We're only just learning how to tap into it and rewire it and all that kind of stuff, and use it to manifest, to create in the world. But without connecting this supercomputer to a heart, we ultimately are living half lives. We're living half-heartedly. And that is one of the biggest dishonors we can have in our life, is living without heart. So I truly feel that this is a time that's very exciting. It's very chaotic in the world. And it's a reason why men are being called to rise more now than ever. And men are self-initiating themselves. It's happening globally. And we can see the chaos, but we can also see this consciousness rising in men. And it's so exciting. But that's truly where I feel like is happening. And that's what I want to talk about, is the heart-mind connection and how to really unlock and lead men home to their hearts, back to the feminine. And it's not either or. It's not, hey, be feminine or be masculine and whatnot. It's really the wholeness, so the unification, the communion of the two between oneself and another. And whether it's your brother, your sister, whoever, that to me is the paradigm in which we're shifting. And I'm like ecstatic to be a human alive in today's society, because we get to see this great transition, this great awakening, this great initiation that we're all going under.
Yeah, exactly. Blending the best of both of those energies. So the past year, just to walk it back, so you were working, it sounds like you were working prior to a year ago, really hard.
I think a lot can relate to that.
Yeah. You had been consulting for a business and then brought on board, and you scaled it massively, which took a lot of time and energy, but then also there were some damaging effects, it sounds like, on your personal life that then once you resigned a year ago, you were confronted with. Is that correct?
It's so true. And I think a lot of people can resonate to this, right? Like, I was addicted to the grind and hustle culture. As soon as I graduated college, I knew I didn't want to go down the traditional path of working for a large corporation. And not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just my path was clearly in a different direction. And I was really interested in entrepreneurship and startups and creating your own path. And so for the last 13, 14 years, that's been my identity. When I was early graduate, I helped co-found a tech company. That's how I moved to Arizona and met your miraculous, legendary brother and how we connected. And that journey, I would never change anything about it, but it really led me down one of the most transformational paths, very spiritual path of awakening, of like developing self-mastery and going to personal development and using that as fuel in the tech world and my role as a leader in business. But I think so many people today can resonate with how neurotic it can be, because we're so addicted to success and to making things happen and grinding. And listen, I'm all for the doing, right? I love taking bold, strong action, especially towards something that my heart is in. And at the same time, I was burning myself out. I wasn't aware of my patterns and shadows and even feelings of unworthiness and why I was doing certain things, or why would I take on more work, more responsibility, when maybe really I wasn't the best person for it. Maybe it's because of certain ideas of not feeling good enough and I needed to do more, improve myself more. And that just continued to eradicate my boundaries, and I wouldn't speak my truth. And so I would just burn out consistently. And they call it founder fatigue. This isn't unique to me. I have my own unique story, but it's universal for the most part. And so when I came out of that experience, what you were alluding to at my last business I was a part of, we scaled really quickly. And I'm again, super grateful for that experience. I know I did certain things in that position, in that company, that looking back, I would do differently for sure. And that's the beauty of wisdom and redemption, really, right? All to come out of it with stronger awareness. And at the same time, I really came out of it. I made a decision to resign at a time where it made most sense. Just on for all of us, it made the most sense for me to leave and for basically for me to have a sacred pause. That's really what it felt like this last year, was an opportunity to go very deeply inward and to start what feels like my path of initiation, my path of self-liberation, my path of self-leadership, and ultimately coming out of it, hopefully more whole, more integrated, and more embodied in my mature masculine, and ultimately allowing the fire to burn away and purify all that is false, so I can step into my higher purpose. So it's been a year, and I'm deeply grateful for it. I wasn't expecting the year after such a challenging period, resigning, and again, so many beautiful things came from that experience. I'm so deeply grateful for it. And it was some of the most challenging moments of my life. I'm just so exhausted all the time, not being emotionally available for myself. And if I can't be emotionally available for myself, how can I possibly be emotionally available for my fiance, for my dogs, for my family? It's literally, you're in survival mode, 24/7.
The fight or flight, yeah.
All the time. And you're in that moment, our business was 24/7. So it never turned off. We had employees globally all over the world. It just never shut down. And so I was never able to reboot. It was just constant, going to bed super late, waking up super early, and all the nine. And I think so many people can resonate with this. And there has to be a point. This was like a crisis event that happened in the business, and it was a natural breaking point for me. Oftentimes it takes a crisis to have that like awareness go, okay, I'm being forced to make a decision, and I'm really grateful for it. But damn, this last year has also been challenging, and I've been going through the fire. So it's you're never exonerated thing.
Yeah, it sounds like you confronted a lot. Two main things come to mind that we talked about a little bit, and I thought was really beautiful to get into, was you mentioned that you're just now realizing what the term unconditional love is, or that unconditional love in practice, which I thought was interesting because we talked about, I think of unconditional love a lot of times, like the default is family. And that's how we opened the discussion around some of the expectations, I guess, on men growing up, and where love is sometimes more conditional, and how that's been taught.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept because it's only been recent in the past few months I've really been reflecting on it. And it's created some of the biggest awareness, like evolutionary leaps, quantum leaps, life, just psychology, like from a psychological standpoint, but even just like a vibrational standpoint. And so what do I mean by that? I basically had a realization. I've been reading, we talked a little bit about this, but I've been reading the Gene Keys with my fiance for years. And it's just, if for anyone who's listening, it's man, woman, whoever, the Gene Keys by Richard Rudd, I highly encourage. It's a beautiful book. And it talks a lot about like forgiveness, grace, transmutation. It's basically a book on transmutation, right? Of shadow into your gifts.
And what, really quick definition of transmutation?
Yeah, transmutation is, to me, transmutation is the ability to shift energetic states. So if you're in a lower vibrational state, oftentimes we remain there because we're unconscious, and so we just repeat patterns. To me, transmutation is then being able to become aware of it and then consciously shift into a higher state. And by higher state, what I mean by just choosing a more aligned reaction, response to the moment, right? So transmutation is not this like woo-woo concept. It's very practical, and it's in every moment you have an opportunity to practice transmutation. In the old days, they called it alchemy, right? And you would think of like alchemy being turning lead into gold. What a beautiful analogy, right? Really what they're talking about is how to turn shadows, challenges, pain into your greatest gifts. And that's what this book is all about, is how to turn your shadows, pain, suffering into gifts, and not just look at it as pain and suffering, getting stuck in the shadow, but being like, oh, actually this darkness, it's not something to overcome. It's actually a gift. There's actually, if I just look at this thing and embrace it with unconditional love, oh my goodness, I can actually transmute this into a state of like bliss, something that can actually be good for me, a new form of awareness, a new energetic expression for how I show up in the world. So again, relatively abstract, and we can talk about this more practically. Like unconditional love to me, like we shouldn't even have to use the word unconditional. Talked about this.
Exactly.
And that was probably the biggest aha moment for me. I was like, in the Gene Keys, they talk about the shadow of half-heartedness. And that shadow really broke my heart at one point, made me cry. Actually, I had a really deep realization of how half-hearted I've been in so many of my endeavors, relationships. And when you're half-hearted, you're disconnected, right? So you're not showing up in your truth, in your power. You're small, you're mediocre, right? You're constricted. And I don't mean mediocre in a judgmental way. I just mean it in a natural way. You're smaller. And so when you're in that state, being able to shift into love, the love frequency, right? Love or fear. These are the two polarities of the world and the energies, love and fear, love and fear. Unconditional love, being able to show up with that means that you have full presence and acceptance of what is. So to have unconditional love for yourself is probably one of the best adventures you can go on, is the inward journey of inner alchemy and inner transmutation, and really seeing the parts of you that maybe weren't loved as a kid. I certainly felt like I had parts of myself that I didn't love, or maybe I felt projected weren't loved onto me. And we carry those things forward, right, into our adult lives. And this is becoming more talked about, right? This is all over the place now. Everyone's talking about childhood trauma and internal family systems and parts play and even generational trauma. All these concepts are now surfacing, and it's becoming more the norm. And that's beautiful. And I think above all of that, the umbrella is just unconditional love. And having conditional love is not love. Like using conditional love, like that is the opposite of love, because basically what you're saying is I will only give love under certain conditions. That's not love. That's something different, but it's not love. And so for me in my life, I had to ask the questions like, where am I being conditional? Oh, even in the last year, right? The last year has been challenging. It's also been beautiful. What a sacred opportunity for me to go inward and have time to contemplate after 14 years of chaotic, just grind mode hustle and like building companies, like amazing. And I needed a breather. So how am I showing up in this present moment? Am I loving the experience, even if it's challenging and maybe not what I thought it should be and not how things I thought how they should end? Or am I going to resist what's happening, or show up with love and be more open to the gifts that are available to me in that moment? So I don't know if that resonates, but I'm happy to dive deeper into any area of that. But the unconditional love piece is just dropping me in right now to my heart. And I guess one final thing I just want to share on this is I was thinking the other day, and it truly moved me to tears. I've been doing a lot of journaling and reflecting in the morning, and it's just been transformational. And I remember contemplating on unconditional love and like where it was showing up for me in my life and in my relationships with myself, even the present moment. And I thought to myself, and I think this is really important for men to hear, especially because we tend to become slaves up here. Our minds actually enslave us. We all talk about like self-mastery, but we don't talk about self-slavery. Emotional mastery. Well, what about emotional slavery? And I think we do this all the time. And I'm just speaking for myself at this point. I have felt like I'm a slave to my emotion and to my lower self and my impulses. I was reflecting on this idea, like, who would I be if I loved myself unconditionally? Like, truly. Who would I be if I loved my fiance unconditionally? Who would I be if I loved my family unconditionally? Who would I be if I loved my life unconditionally? Who would I be if I loved this present moment unconditionally? And the only voice that came up was a loud resonance was free. I would be the freest man in the world if I just loved unconditionally. And this is not a new frequency. This is not a new idea. This is like what they talk about, Christ consciousness, like just unconditional love is, I think, emerging and coming back. It's the ancient echo that is coming back into our resonance. And I'm so excited to practice this, because by no means have I mastered that. That is
right.
next level. But to have the opportunity to practice it is a gift.
The practicing part, because I guess a couple of things are coming to mind for me. I think when I think of unconditional love, let's just take the example of just loving yourself. Okay, I'm not exactly the weight I want to be, or I'm not exactly, and then it's, do I just accept that? But then I guess loving yourself too, it's like you have to identify the love or fear. Like loving yourself is taking care of yourself at the same time. And so then it is coming out of love. But if you're looking at your body as something that's like just aesthetic or something like that, then that is fear, maybe like fear of rejection. And then in your, one of the reasons why.
Can I just touch on that? Because I think that's such a great example. And I think we should make that distinction. I was struggling with this. Oh, does unconditional love just accepting everything, to live in denial, essentially? And no, right? Self-love is definitely not accepting mediocrity. It's not accepting other people walking all over you and accepting, right? That is not what I'm talking about. Unconditional love is definitely about taking full responsibility of your life and your emotions and where you are and where you're heading. Unconditional love in that example would be, okay, I'm evaluating myself right now. And I'm evaluating how I feel, how I look, how I want to show up, my energy, how I want to express myself. Your body's a temple. Beautiful. How would I want to treat my temple? How have I been treating my temple? So there is a reconciliation. It's okay for us to look at ourselves and go, I love myself, and there's a greater version of myself that I know is available to me, right? So the unconditional love would be an acceptance of who you are in that moment, where you are, and to also just love your past, amor fati, right? Love your fate, love where you are, love your body as it is. And you're absolutely, totally allowed to go, and I want to treat my body better. Because of unconditional love, I love myself so much that I actually want to be as healthy as I can. But that is a completely different frame of mind, a completely different like expression of helping your body get healthier than going, I'm shaming my body. I'm going to start working out and eating well because I'm judging my body. I'm comparing myself to other people. I don't feel worthy. So you're coming at it through fear, right? It's either fear or love. I think we don't have to overcomplicate this at all. You're either showing up in fear or you're showing up in love, and you can oscillate between the two. So even in that example, the unconditional love is operating from a place of expansion, excitement, joy, truth. The other side is coming from a place of contraction, falsehood, limitations, it's fear. And so I think for anyone listening, it's a really important distinction, because unconditional love does not mean that you just accept what is by any sense. You should take your life super seriously, and not seriously, the oscillation, but you should take especially your health very seriously, your body very seriously. But you need to make a decision on how you're going to show up in how you make changes in your life. Is it coming from a lower vibration, a lower energy, a fear, or is it coming from a place of excitement and expansion? And if it's okay that it's coming from fear, but look at it and see if you can move it into a higher expression. You're going to have much better success long-term and short-term from that place than the fear place. So I think it's a perfect example, like from a conditional love and unconditional love standpoint.
Yeah, it's a personal journey for me right now. And then a personal journey of yours. And it sounds like one of the reasons why you have been doing so much reflecting is because of your relationship and soon committing in marriage. And if you feel comfortable sharing a little bit about that, it sounds like you've been doing some work identifying both of your attachment styles. And and that's one of the practical ways that you've been exploring, I guess, unconditional love in a practical sense.
Yeah. Love, I know you're listening to this, so I'm going to share from my heart. Being in a relationship is one of the most sacred things you can participate in. And that starts with yourself. And I've definitely learned that being in a relationship, that the journey towards a really successful marriage, family. And that's just so everyone knows, like my frame. I just think that the most rebellious thing you could do in today's world is to start an incredible family. But to be the best man, woman, father, brother you could possibly be, and to create a legacy for other children to follow in and to end the cycles of suffering. That's the frame that I'm trying to operate out of as much as possible. And so when I think about the container of my romantic relationship with my fiance and what we're building together, I view it, and everyone talks about this, it's not me saying this uniquely, it's a mirror. And I didn't really understand what that meant when I first heard it. I was like, interesting. It's a mirror. Okay, cool. And what I've learned is once you get through the honeymoon phase, that just builds such a beautiful foundation. The next natural phase is to face all the fears and to literally have it be an opportunity for you to look at all the ways in which you're still a hurt little child and how you're carrying that into your relationship. And for me, boy, was that humbling. I thought that it's like you think you know, but you don't know what you don't know. And boy, I thought I knew a lot. And once I got into the most mature relationship I've ever been in, it really mirrored back to me how I was still very much in my little boy prince energy often, not all the time. And I think that's why my fiance fell in love with me, because she saw who I am at my best and what I'm capable of doing. And yet I had not looked at those lower patterns and programs and ways of being, these limiting beliefs, these fears, these feelings of unworthiness, all these things that as a man, I just completely suppressed and pushed down. And really, I distracted myself. Let's just be honest. Like, I loved building my businesses, but I literally, during, I think, 7 or 8 years of building my first business, I didn't even allow myself to date anyone. That's crazy, right? I was just so married to my business, and that's all I thought about. And so being in a relationship was a fear for me. So the emotional side of being in a relationship, I think for a man is the hardest thing to go through, because we have to actually confront our biggest fears and take full responsibility of our lives and learn how to, we talk about attachment styles, and we could definitely chat on that. But even this is something I'm still trying to really deeply understand and master, which is just even the concept of holding space. Like, that has blown my mind and my heart open, because, you know, what I'm learning about the masculine, the feminine is all about flow and creativity, intuition. It wants to flow. And I think the analogy a lot of people have heard is feminine energy is like a river. It's just water flowing. And masculine energy is like the riverbanks. It creates the structure, the container for it to flow in. And so I think that's a beautiful analogy. And when I think about challenges and triggers and things coming up in relationship that mirror back to you, like one of my triggers was feeling blamed or criticized in relationship. So if I ever felt blamed or criticized, I would feel immense shame instantly. And I would go into survival mode. I would go into really, not even flight, definitely flight. That's the avoidant behavior. But I would go into more specifically freeze. I would actually in my prefrontal cortex feel a massive dense ball. And it actually felt like my brain was turning off. And I couldn't think, I couldn't respond. I actually had to like take myself and put myself in my bedroom and just sit for an hour and let it thaw out. It was like frozen, right? And so for me, going into these experiences of learning how to understand my own emotions and what's coming up for me in these things, basically, I'm having this experience in real time with my fiance where I'm feeling triggered and feeling shame because of a situation that actually is very small between her and I. It's my body remembers this experience when I was a kid, and it's triggering me to go back into this fight or flight experience as a kid. So now I'm operating from like my little kid's side, and I'm like projecting her as my mother.
Yes. And then, in talking to other male, this is something that was coming up. It's
an acid trip. You're just like, what is going on? You don't understand it. And we'll talk more about the definitions of like avoidant and the anxious attachment style. I'm the avoidant in my relationship for sure. Then I shut down and I don't communicate. So I'm having this experience, and then I leave and I shut down, and it leaves my fiance going like, what the hell is going on? what's going on in its
And then
mind.
maybe feeling rejected too.
100% rejected, confused. It's often said that it's more difficult for the anxious attachment style partner than the avoidant because they're the ones on the receiving end of it. They at least want to confront it and talk, whereas the avoidant is just, I need space and time and I can't even talk about this. So this mirror in these relationships, these moments that are really challenging, this is what transmutation is. It's the opportunity to take what seems like a really shitty thing, a really terrible experience, something you want to run away from, especially as a man, like shoving it down. I don't want to confront my emotions. I don't want to think about trauma, right? All these things. The second that you just flip the switch and go, this is an opportunity for me to transcend this, to learn from it, then you have awareness and you can show up in relationship and talk about what's going on. And ultimately, that's taking full responsibility. Like, I think right now, and I'm just going to speak for myself and for anyone who resonates with this, man or woman, like taking full responsibility of your life is foundational. It's number one. Like, you have to take full responsibility. And oftentimes we live in just unconscious patterns. So it's hard for us to take responsibility. So it is a evolutionary process. You got to start with unawareness. That's part of the process. And then you become aware. But once you become aware, like they say, ignorance is bliss. Once you become aware, you're in the fire. You're being pulled through. If you're in your own hell and you want to go to paradise, the only way out is by going through the fire. Burning it away. So that to me is what being in a relationship, and this sounds so negative, right? So many like euphoric and beautiful moments. I have the most fun and loving relationship with my fiance. But what it really did for me is give me a really hard look in the mirror of where I was not showing up with integrity, where I wasn't creating safety for her or for me.
Which are masculine type of values. Or I guess just we were talking about even defining what we're talking about with masculine and feminine beyond gender, because you and I listen to similar podcasts and like talking about masculine and feminine, and I'm not the best at articulating it, but I know their archetypes, their energies, and if you were just to quickly define what just like some attributes of what we say by masculine and feminine.
Sure, and this won't be an exhaustive list, and
it's
please,
just
anyone who wants to share and all that good stuff. To me, masculinity is about creating order in the chaos, right? And a lot of that is showing up with integrity, presence, awareness. It's creating containers for the feminine to flow in. So my personal belief is that the masculine is here to actually serve the feminine. I truly believe
I like that.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that is that doesn't always necessarily mean serving women. I don't mean it from a gender standpoint.
Oh, right. Okay.
But it certainly is and can be. So I really, again, like I view the feminine being in the heart and the masculine being in the mind.
Interesting.
So that's how I think about this. And I live so much in my masculine and I haven't lived in my heart. I've cut it off. I felt like it's unsafe. I've been disconnected. And so the heart, though, is where virtue lives. To be a virtuous human being, this is where like being noble is critical, right? Think about the ancient times, being a nobleman, all they taught about was virtue, strength, honor, integrity, presence, protection, right? Masculinity is about protection. It's not about domination. But we live in a world where the masculine thinks it needs to dominate the feminine, that the mind needs to dominate the heart. I need to tell the heart or shut the heart up so I can go do the thing. And that's not how nature works. It's not natural for us to beat to the march of the masculine. It's more natural to beat to the heart, to the pulse of the heart, to the feminine. And this is abstract in a sense, but that's what I think it's up to each person to feel into that and to see what resonates for them. Everyone needs to figure this out on their own in terms of how they want to show up, but there are archetypes. And you can learn more about it. You literally just go on ChatGPT and ask the question. First principles, tell me about masculinity and femininity polarity. It'll give you a beautiful rundown, better than I ever could. But that, to me, is the most important piece here. It's the return home, and our home is our heart. Woman, womb of man. That's what this is, and it's about synarchy, creating, co-leading together masculine and feminine. Everyone's talking about, I need to be more masculine, I need to be more feminine. We would be able to serve more profoundly. We would be more aligned with our purpose. We would actually be participating in the co-evolution of the human species at a more significant rate. I truly believe that if we connected more of our heart and our minds together. But that takes courage because we've learned to disconnect from our hearts. Learned to disconnect from the feminine, to think that we are superior, the mind is superior to heart, that the masculine is superior to the feminine, that it's not okay for men to cry. I'm not talking about crying out of weakness because something bad goes wrong and now we're weak and let me cry and complain about it. That's not what I'm talking about. But being able to feel into your truth and your raw emotions, there's nothing more masculine than being able to do that. Like truly, there's nothing more masculine than a man who can create his own masculine container for himself to allow for his own feminine energy to flow through naturally and in a safe, non-judgmental way. So, example, me sitting down and just contemplating on unconditional love is me creating a masculine container for me to feel safe, to allow myself to contemplate and reflect on these topics that I never would have done if I didn't create a masculine container for it. My feminine wouldn't be able to flow in that sense. So it makes it really practical and not, I think so many men get caught, because I'm going to speak for myself. I used to get caught up in, oh, like you're talking about feelings and emotions and like crying. Like this is so lame and I don't have time for that. Let's go play sports. And when I think that's cool, but that's like boy energy. That's, if anyone is resonating with that energy that I just shared, it's not a judgment. It's not shame. It's just recognition of where you are on your journey. That's boy energy. And what we want to do is start tapping into man energy and not like masculine energy, but mature masculine. Because even the masculine, the mature masculine can have shadows and you could fall into being a tyrant or a weakling. There are different archetypes and shadows even with your higher self. So it's a very fascinating world. And once you start going into, you're like, I can't stop. Like this is too much fun.
Sounds like you've definitely been on this journey of awareness, and now you're in the integration and practicing and building some frameworks for other people, which I do want to jump into. And also just in terms of modalities to be able to access, I guess, the feminine energy. We were talking about how breathwork is a great way to do that. And you have had amazing experiences from that. And I would encourage men. I've been getting the question from male friends just about releasing emotion or their intention to be able to tap into their emotion more. And breathwork is a great tool for that.
It's like the supreme tool.
Right.
It's the supreme tool. Like we don't need, doesn't need to be hierarchy, but it's, your breath, right? Ancients knew it's prana, it's your life force. And it's so fascinating that with your nervous system, you've got your autonomic nervous system and your breath is so natural. You don't have to think about it. And so when you go into survival mode, your body instinctively cuts your breath short. And so you go into survival, and that's very helpful when there's a saber-toothed tiger, you're about to die, there's some crazy, you're being invaded, something's happening. You have to go into fight or flight. Your body literally mobilizes to do that. And men are created to do that. We're here because we went through that in our history, right? And yet today, I think we're learning how to transcend the natural impulse to go into survival. And what that means is connecting back to our breath. Our breath is our source of power. Our breath is our source of presence, right? Being present. And so in any moment as a man, you're feeling angry, sad, resentful, disturbed, disconnected. We're up here and we're allowing our emotions to, your emotions, again, it's energy. So it's meant to flow. Emotions are feminine. They're meant to flow and they get stuck in our bodies. They get stuck. That's not natural. You look at an animal, they get scared, a fawn gets scared getting chased by a lion or whatever. It shakes it off, instantly shakes it off and keeps going. It doesn't have trauma. We hold on to these things. I think it's important for us to be able to learn techniques that ground us. So as a man, what does that mean? Presence. I think every man would agree, and I think every human, and I don't want to be just talking about one gender here, but as a man, I can speak to this as something I've really struggled with, and I resonate with the stories of the other men you're talking about. I've really struggled with being present, surrendering to what is, being able to discern, should I fight or should I surrender? And being able to understand my emotions, being able to choose better responses in the moment instead of reacting in the moment and then having to lead the repair afterwards and constantly have to do that. At some point, we have to learn the way I'm reacting is not appropriate. You can do that through breath. I think it's free. It's completely available. You don't need to go study at Harvard. It is available to every human. And when you simply just reconnect to deep breathing, what we did in the beginning, I feel like every leader in the world should start every meeting with how you did. Ground everyone into presence, into awareness, into their hearts. Very powerful. In terms of breathing techniques and my experience, I know you have as well. It's called Breathword, right? I'm curious.
As you're saying that though, I am a little bit embarrassed to admit, but this is real life. And yesterday went to a beautiful inner feng shui meditation at Mudwater Gather that my friend Elizabeth hosted. And I was so excited to make it out, ride my bike down Main Street, sunny day, beautiful, after a client meeting that I had really been prepping for. I get out of the leaving Mudwater and I get a Slack message, triggered. I knee-jerk response back to it. I'm just like, all the bliss and all the centeredness just flew out the window. And I now have to do what you were saying, where today I'm crafting the apology and all this stuff. And it's like, I was beating myself up about it, but even before that happened, when I was still at Mudwater Gather and talking to Elizabeth, we were talking about how it is just these tiny micro moments, the 0.01% advancement of how you react and respond and evolve as a human. And it's not always these like exponential leaps. It's those tiny little day by day, just like incremental changes and the awareness like we keep talking about. And so it's easy to beat yourself up. Like you're like, oh, I've done all this work, I've done this, whatever. And then I still act this way. But it is a slow, forever evolving human.
We have to have grace. We have to have compassion for our own self. Like, we're human, and that's what's so fun is if we were perfect, life would be so lame and boring. So we need the oscillation. We're never going to be perfect. You're not going to be the first perfect human being. I won't be. There never has been. It's all good. And I think that's also important to note. We have to be okay with failing. We have to not shame ourselves. And this is something I've struggled with so much. And probably the deepest wound that I've been reflecting on and working through the past year is shame. I didn't realize how much shame I stored in my genetic body and how it still shows up and how I am addicted to shame, actually. So even in new scenarios that come up, I will shame myself. And it's so time to get over that. I hate using the word get over. It's like something we gotta like, even that's shaming it, right? But to just love, right? To be like, hey, cool, like this is something that's coming up for me that I did. It wasn't what I needed. We don't need to add more. It's,
to just look at it. And,
it's enough to just be like, cool, I see that. This is how I want to show up. I need to take full responsibility. I need to lead the repair. And I'm going to go now apologize. I'm going to take ownership for that. That's a beautiful thing. 99% of people ain't even doing that. They're just repeating the pattern. They don't even care. They're, again, stuck in their head or stuck in survival, and so they don't care necessarily.
We only have a few minutes left. This has flown by. I want to make sure that we get to the Noble Beast, what you're doing there, and any tools and takeaways that,
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to even share what I'm working on. I'm really excited about this. This is like the outcome of the last 13 months is exciting. And even before that, everything I've been doing before, it's called Noble Beast Academy. And it's really a rite of passage. It's an initiatory framework for men. It's a system of transformation that I'm mapping out and inviting men into this container for. And it's basically a 5-stage program. And I'm deeply honored to be able to bring this to fruition with men who really resonate with the struggles I've had, the poem that you shared. Again, that's just such energetic truth in there that I think a lot of people are going to resonate with. And what it is basically goes from an unconscious, unintegrated, ununified man through the hero's journey, heroic journey that we all must go on to becoming a unified man, a noble beast, right? And so what does that look like? Stage one, and I'll go through this very quickly. Stage one is basically the unaware man, right? they're uninitiated. They're drifting through life. This man is someone who is still ruled by their lower behaviors. They're seeking external validation. So they're looking for status, money, all the things. They're unaware. And like we said, sometimes ignorance is bliss because they can just keep doing that. And they're not necessarily, they are definitely deeply suffering inside because they're not getting to where they want to be, but they're not even really aware that there's a new world. It's the old world, classic hero's journey, archetype stuff. Stage 2 is really the acknowledgement. It's the awareness. And it's understanding that what you've been living in, what you've been doing is only a fraction of who you can be. You've actually been living in lie. You've been conditioned to be addicted, whether it be to vices like porn or food or whatever vice you want to consider. It's ruling you. And so at this point, through awareness, men start suffering even more. Actually, it's like a paradox because through awareness, there's this cognitive dissonance. They're like, whoa, I see the behaviors and the patterns where I've created distrust and dishonesty in my own life. And I now see also who I'm capable of being and who I want to be. And it's this oscillation between the two. So this is it's the call to initiation. Every man hears it. Every person hears it to initiate themselves into their higher essence. But most men will hear it, they'll step in, they get afraid, and they go back. They go back to the old world because it's safer, it's easier, it's more comfortable than showing up and walking through the fucking fire that burns away all that is false. And that's what we're talking about is really the path of initiation into a higher self. That means you got to strip away all that's false, drop the armor. That shit ain't protecting you anymore. You don't need the armor. So phase 3 would be the trials of the warrior. This is when a man actually goes through and starts doing the discipline and learning how to show up daily, building more integrity, doing the work, facing his shadow, getting into brotherhood. I don't think we talk about this at all really in today's world, but not only do we not have rites of initiation anymore for men to step into their higher self. We don't even really have brotherhood. We have like lower brother, which is like about beating each other up and calling each other names. We don't have brotherhood that helps support each fellow man and move them forward. So that would be stage 3. Stage 4 is the death and rebirth. This is like when you actually go through the process of the alchemy and you've done enough work, you're going through the process. And usually this could even be through a really intense experience, whether it's like a major crisis in your life or doing some sort of plant medicine, whatever it might be that can help really strip it away, like that deep immersion. And then of course, stage 5 is coming out with a more embodied version of yourself. We're never perfect. We're never going to be pure, right? This is where we get to really strip everything away and we're more embodied. We're more in our divine masculine, right? We're really more there to protect, to serve. We're no longer there to take and to compete and be distracted and drifting, actually have purpose and clarity, and we're moving together with the natural flows of life. And so that is, in a nutshell, the program which I'm here to take men on is just leading them back to their hearts, which is the most courageous thing they could possibly do. And as a man who is on that journey, is walking that journey, I can tell you, not only is it the most terrifying thing you could do, it's the most liberating thing you could do. And so therefore, it's actually the most loving thing you could possibly do is to go on this path.
The freedom of unconditional love, like you were saying.
Full circle.
Full circle.
Full circle. Perfect.
Yes.
Completion. Reconciliation.
Yes. So where can people find out more about this?
Yeah, so they can go to my website. They can go to noblebeastacademy.com. And so I'll have resources there for them. They can join, they can meet up with me. I'll be doing some local meetups here in LA and I'll be launching some programs. Yeah, again, women, if you've got men who you think would resonate with this, men, if you're resonating with this, I would love to chat. That's what it's all about.
Awesome. I'm excited to see how that progresses. And yeah, I'll be sending some referrals your way.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matt, for the conversation today. Thank you. Thank you for being here, for witnessing, for breathing, and for feeling with us. If Matt's words resonated with you, I invite you to explore the path of the Noble Beast, his modern day dojo and brotherhood for men stepping into legacy, leadership, and love. You'll find a link in the show notes to download a free initiation meditation and begin your own journey home. And if you would like more stories about reconnecting with yourself, come say hi on Instagram at Hey Breathword. Until next time, may you keep living like breath is poetry and life a poem unfolding.